celebrating Startup September, as what our logo also says, and it's a month-long celebration of the startup ecosystem. At Headstart, we want to bring all of our partners together to you know do different sessions around capacity building, mentor sessions, and Headstart's also completing 15 years this year, so we're celebrating it in a big way. That's where we thought that it's very important for us to get different perspective and keep upgrading ourselves, because the startup ecosystem is such that it's evolving every minute, and if we're not equipped for it, or if we're not constantly upskilling, we're doing something wrong. So the entire concept of this ecosystem enabler CBC came from there, and we have a fantastic audience. And I know for the next 1 hour you'll be interacting with them, so you'll get to know with the quality of questions and interactions that you'll have. So yeah, without further ado, I think we have enough people also who have joined in now, and I would give over the stage to you, and would love for you to just maybe introduce yourself for 2 minutes and take this forward.
Thank you so much, Vanya. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Vishesh, as Vanya just told you. I work at PayU. I look at the startup vertical. We're doing a bunch of things, much like yourselves, as ecosystem enablers, trying to help startups go up and running, grow with credit or other forms of funding, and then eventually scale up as well. We're also looking to set up a fund to give them an exit. So maybe I'll reach out for help on that one for all of you guys. I've been here about 4 years. This is the second business I'm building here. The first one was around a two-sided network in the bill payment space. Happy to talk a lot more about that, and I think I'll mostly use that as an example to see how we build a lean canvas. Before this, I was at business school. Before that, I worked in Government of India Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, and I started my career in finance. I started as a mutual fund hedge fund associate, did my CFA with it, used to look at these 3 screens in front of me all the time, and then I got too bored of that, the charts and the moving graphs, so I thought I might as well do something interesting. So government was that. And then when Congress got kicked out, it was a coterminous position, so we got kicked out. So I know a thing or two about things failing. After that, I actually did a consulting stint, which I left to do a startup, which lost funding. So I understand, and then that wrapped up. So I understand the pain of not having funds to go even a few more days. So I think just someone who comes from a corporate, a government / a startup background, I have a lot of learnings that I will probably always bounce off with my friends. It'll be good to bounce them off with people who talk to startups or work with startups on a daily basis. That's primarily the idea. The idea will also be to take in your questions mostly and see how we can collaborate more, because I'm sure whatever I tell you, you can read all of that online, or some of the perspective or some of the experiences that I can share, I'm sure some of you have had similar, if not the same experience. So rather than being self-involved, I'll rather help you ask questions, help myself learn more from your questions, and so on. So hopefully we can keep this more interactive. If we are all good, I am happy to jump into the topic. Vanya, let me know whenever we start, and I can straight jump in.
Sure, I think we can do that. Let's start.
Perfect. So we started talking about this about a couple of weeks back. Vanya had reached out, and Madhurima, who we speak with at Microsoft, had mentioned about this event. So we wanted to talk about the lean model canvas, and then I was talking to Vanya on how and what are we talking about, who are we talking to, what is the format of the event, and having grasped all of that, I think what I want to do is, first of all, give you a story of what we do as ecosystem enablers, and I'm going to put us at the same stage or at the same sort of field where we're trying to help startup founders, and we're trying to help the startup ecosystem as such by being enablers. And the theme that I want to touch base on is giving them common language to speak. The other thing that I want to do is talk about the difference between a business model canvas versus a lean canvas. The business model canvas that works usually for late stage or growth stage companies, whereas a lean canvas that needs to work for companies that do not have market validation or proof of concept right now and need to experiment and test out their hypothesis much faster and fail or succeed much faster and build on that rather than create a detailed plan. Because as a CFA charter holder or someone who's worked in finance, I can tell you the easiest thing to do is put out formulas on an Excel and pull that out for a 3-year trajectory and say that, hey, this is our discounted cash flow model and this is what our valuation is. Real world does not work like that. Having worked here, done a business, and now the second one, I can tell you that with a lot of certainty. There is probably no. Someone had told me this. There's probably the most fanciful imagination put in an Excel sheet, and the most lies that you can put is in an Excel sheet. So I'll try and talk about a lot more about that. But before I start, because I see a lot of black on my screen, anyone knows about the Tower of Babel? Because that's where I want to start. Anyone knows about the Tower of Babel? Happy to start with that. Anyone wants to raise hands? Otherwise, I'm very good to call on a few people. Okay. Should I, Vanya, what's the rule of engagement? Okay, Shreya said this. Okay, Shreya. At least a no is also a conversation, at least. Perfect. So the Tower of Babel essentially is that, let's all, yeah, thanks, Vanya. The Tower of Babel is essentially that, there was human race which was united and speaking the same language, and they were going about building a city, and they were building a city, and they're almost built it, and then they were building a tower, or a palace which was supposed to overlook the entire city, but with its height up in the sky. So think about, I don't know, some people building Dubai with Burj Khalifa there. And while they were building that, there was a Greek god, the national god of Israel and Judah at that point in time, called Yehovah. He came down and gave them language capabilities. So everyone started speaking their language, and everyone sort of got distorted with their language. And as they were speaking language, no one understood each other. And this is how the Tower of, just a second, I think I've got that down. I don't know if I'm share, just a second. I am not able to see. This is what happens mostly on presentations, but let me try and see. Okay, got it. So this is what it looked like. This is what essentially became of it, because everyone started talking in a different language. So they built the city, as you can see, but while they were building the tower, they all got language capabilities, and then they started talking the same language. I believe most startup founders or most startups that I've been speaking with, or I'm sure you all have similar experiences that we all speak with, are the smartest people, have a lot of passion, have a lot of ideas, but their ideas are based on their own experiences. And so is the case for everyone, right? We are all coming from a certain experience, and we speak from that experience. We have ideas that originate from that experience. The idea of a lean model canvas, or essentially a canvas, is that we give them common language to speak on. Now, what does that mean? Every business would have certain aspects that form the framework of it. Businesses have to have a certain set of aspects, like you have to make money if it's a business. You will have cost of doing business, so that would be your cost. You will have a problem statement, hopefully, that you're trying to solve, and not marrying into your own idea. You will have certain customer segments only that you can solve for. You will probably have a unique value proposition, why you're better than the market, and that's why you should be in the market trying to develop something new, and you're excited about it and you're making a difference. You should also probably have some channels that you'll use to reach out to your consumers, and so on and so forth, right? So I think as enablers, our real job is to give all of these startups a common framework in which they can start speaking, so that the tower can be built eventually, and it touches the sky, and it eventually, reaches the point that it's supposed to be reaching, which was essentially, in this case, the Tower of Babel was supposed to overlook the city, supervise it, give it guidance, all of that, which it could not. So that's where I'll really set base for the conversation that we want to have today. That I think the job for us as ecosystem enablers is to really help the startup founders or help the community speak the same language and take the same language to maybe then investors and enablers in the ecosystem, so that they understand that they understand what they're exactly talking about. Now, this has evolved. The framework for common language has evolved from business models to startup models, which are usually now in common parlance called lean model canvas. What's happened in this case is that essentially a lot of frameworks that worked for traditional businesses, growth businesses, did not work for the startups, did not work for a lot of businesses that were right now trying to test a hypothesis. Hey, will a self-driving car even work? Maybe today that's a growth stage company and that's a hypothesis that has been tested. But when they were starting it out, they had to build something which has to be quickly tested, and then it has to go further or not. Similarly, Excel sheets, like I just finished the strap exercise or strategy and planning exercise for my vertical for the next 3 years, and I've committed numbers for the next 3 years. I honestly have no idea what is going to happen in the next 3 months, maybe. So let alone the next 3 years. So I think what companies or anyone today is starting to realize is that we need frameworks that evolve much more quickly, that take in feedback from the market, and then sort of build on it a lot more quickly. And it has to be a self-learning framework. It cannot be a framework which is set in stone and then doesn't change, and it's a committed number that is on a certain path, and you have certain revenue levers that you've defined for yourself for the next 3 years. Those models don't work anymore. But let me cover that. What usually works for large businesses. So this is what a business model canvas used to look like, or still looks like for most growth and mature businesses. What you would have here is that you would have certain set of key partners, you would have key activities that you're doing, some resources that you have, the value proposition, customer segments that you're building for, what kind of channels do you use to get to the customers, what sort of relationships are there with the customers that you have. It'll depend on the segment as well as the channel that you use, right? So, for example, a Google Pay does not have a direct relationship with its customers, whereas a PayU, say, in the same payment space, has a direct relationship with the merchant, at least with the large ones, right? So, depends on the channel that you use, the customer relationship that you have depends on the channels that you use. And then, of course, there are the costs in the revenue structure. Now, what out of this does not work for a startup is quite obvious, right? That some of these things are for growth stage and late stage companies where the hypothesis has been tested. If you notice, or let me just again put this to the chat response that we have here. What do you think, or which of these aspects do you think don't work for a startup that should change in this canvas? Anyone who wants to speak, unmute themselves, post it in a chat. What do you think? Which out of these 4 wouldn't work for a startup? Which out of these 9 areas of the framework won't work for a startup?
Cost structure.
Fair enough. Cost structure. And why would you say that?
I think that is, I don't know, probably the most variable component of the whole table. Might keep changing depending on how much funds you have right now, how much funds you may have later.
Yeah, but my fair point. It could change very well, but the question really is, which of these aspects don't really work for a startup in the sense. Cost and revenue, I think, are the two most commonly applied. Anything that we do, honestly, cost and revenue has to be factored in, even though they're very variable and they could change. Key partners is definitely something that would probably not work for a startup, because right now you're trying to test the hypothesis. Partnerships really come at a growth stage where you're saying, hey, you've tested this hypothesis and now you can build it with these partners. For example, for PayU, today our partnership with Shopify really works because we have tested the hypothesis that a startup trying to build a company or a website is looking for payment integration as well. So that hypothesis has already been tested. So partnerships really work. So key partners is a great point. Thanks, Yashvi. I see Sudha, too early to think of revenue streams.
Is it like customer segments? We need more kind of like, for example, if customer segment, we have multiple customer segments and the entire thing changes, right? Like customer relationship channels. So that segment needs some refinement in this business, because if we do have some 4 customer segments, definitely we need to plot a 4 business model canvas for it.
So absolutely. So great point. But customer segments have to always be, I think, again, let me say 3 things maybe that wouldn't change for anything that we do in life, be it a business or any solution that we're trying to drive. Who we are trying to design the solution for is probably the most key aspect of it, because then you're able to identify personas, you're able to identify their problems, then you're able to map the solutions to it. Then you have to look at the revenue streams that will come out of it and the cost that it will take to build those solutions. Only then can there be the initial analysis that, hey, at least I meet my variable costs. For example, if you're putting up a factory and you say that putting up a factory right now costs me a lot more because the fixed cost of it is very, very high. But if I'm able to identify the variable cost as well as revenue, at least I know on a variable basis I'm making money with each transaction. Once you get there, then you can map out that in how many years are you going to be able to recover the fixed cost. So the customer segment, the revenue and cost, I believe, are going to apply to any kind of business model that we, for a startup, for a mature company, for any stage of company that we design for. Customer relationships, on the other hand, I completely agree. Customer relationships actually get defined much later on, depending on which segment of customers do you have and how do you engage with them. Today, when PayU started, it started as a very enterprise-heavy company, and it still, most of the revenue comes from there. So our relationship with the customers are defined now based on different segments that we have. But when you're starting out and testing out a hypothesis, your relationships wouldn't be the top priority. Your segmentation will be a very key piece that you will start with. So again, great point, Yashvi. Pankaj, key activities. So yeah, I think key activities as well, because seems like a very refined stage at which you will identify, hey, these are the activities I will double down on. What happens at the early stage for a startup is that you're always looking for something that you can quickly test out. You test that hypothesis and then you see that it works or not. If it doesn't work, you change that key activity. You don't keep pressing on to the idea or marry the idea. I think the biggest thing for us as enablers is to also bring down some bit of attachment or emotional attachment that usually founders have for their idea. We never have to fit a solution to a problem. We have to always go the other way around. And I think keeping founders honest on that is also something that we as ecosystem enablers need to do a good job of. So great point, Pankaj. Okay, Yashvi again on key resources. Yeah, so Yashvi, I think you've got all this figured. So yeah, key resources is another point, right? Because as a startup, the only key resource you have is the people who are driven by the passion to solve this problem and the limited funding that you have if you're not bootstrapped. So key resources also come in much later when you're at a growth stage or when you're able to map out exactly what all you have in your arsenal to fight the world and to scale your business model. So great point there. Anything else that anyone thinks should change?
Maybe addition of one segment, like, problem validation or something like that.
Great point. So yeah, you can also talk about what should be added here, which is what is going to change. So essentially the model will just flip and include the startup and become a startup centric model. So yeah, if you want to put that on the chat, it'll be great proof that you said the right answer on what should be added. But yeah,
sure.
problem validation as well as looking at the existing solutions in the market is a great point that every startup should look at, because even if you identified the right problem, it'll be very important for you to look at whether the solution for this problem already exists. Are you trying to solve for a solved problem already? That is another thing that that we need to identify really carefully while we building our company. Fantastic point, Dr. Anyone else? What should be added? Like, what should you replace for key activities, key resources, key partners, and customer relationships, as we all identified? Let's start adding to this. Yash, we want to give it a shot. You seem to know most of the answers. So
yeah, I think so, Vishesh. I think so. It's more on the solutions, the problem, what we are looking at, and how do we measure the matrices during this phase. So because that's early stage, so I think it's more on understanding like how do we measure or how that we see that we are moving to the right direction. I think so. Those are the key areas where we'll be looking at under the lean model canvas and team.
Fantastic point. So OKR, yeah, I would say more than key results, the matrix, right? Results are always an output measure. So, for example, would you judge OKRs is a term that actually gives me a lot of PTSD, because that's a very corporate employee assessment, mid-year annual review sort of a term. But that, I think, is another thing that we make a mistake on, right? As we judge employees at the company, because we're measuring them on the results, which are the output matrix. We ideally need to judge most people or even our business ideas, especially at an early stage, on the input matrix. Are we getting the right sort of interest? So for example, if you're testing a hypothesis, you would want to measure whether there's uptake and interest for that product, whether there is essentially conversion down the funnel, which is more positive. It's not about how much revenue, which usually what a key result will be, how much revenue comes in. The matrix that you would want to measure is everything from what you have in the R matrix, right? Acquisition, activation, revenue, retention, and referral. So you want to see the entire funnel of your product and how it really works for you. Key results are usually what again sort of get applied to companies at a late stage, where you're measuring them on GMV, revenue, and GM. Anyone else? But great point, Rizwan. Maybe just the input matrix instead of output. But yeah, matrix for sure. Understanding the problem scope and competitors. Absolutely, Pankaj. I think understanding the problem is the first stage for any startup, because if you're a startup, then you're necessarily, by definition, to me, startups are not Zomatos and Flipkarts of the world. They have tested the hypothesis. I mean, we can keep calling ourselves startups still, even we are a listed company, and we have employees who've been working at the company and who've tested. I think startup, to me, if I were to put it in one line, is essentially a company trying to test a hypothesis. If they've tested the hypothesis and it's a successful hypothesis, or the hypothesis says, yes, this is true and this is not a null hypothesis, then that, I think, from that day ceases to be technically or by academic definitions a startup. So understanding the problem scope is absolutely the first thing. So great point there. Competitors, again, same point that, we have to review the existing solutions in the market so that we're not married to the idea that ours is the best. We have to evaluate what already exists in the market and how our solution is better than that. But keep making your points. These are all fantastic points. Please go on. Anyone else? More especially emerging players. Abhishek, what do we mean by
like I mean to say, as a competitor is already listed here. So I mean to say, we have already analyzed the existing players, but
okay,
there
got
can
it.
be, yeah. So
you're saying in the existing solutions, you should specifically look at the solutions that are much more successful in solving that problem.
Yeah, and like there can be new players also in the market solving the similar problem in better way, or they can come up with some add-on.
Got you. Agreed. Anyone else? So we've covered right now problem validation and competition, and we've covered key metrics. There are two more. We've replaced 4, so we need 2 more before we jump onto the lean model canvas and we reveal it, which is probably the end of the monologue, and we start and open ourselves to questions. 2 more. Come on, guys. It's only 5:30 on a Monday. Solution and unfair advantage. Perfect. Hey, Yashvi, I think we should switch places. You have the answers. So great point. I think solutions is another thing. So when you identify different problems, you should be able to also map solutions to it. If you've ever looked at any case consulting exercise, and I've spent some time in consulting, it always starts with defining the problem and breaking it down word by word to try and understand the scope of the problem. Then it really goes into segmentation of the customers and saying, who are you solving it for? So what is the pain point first? Then you get into the frequency and the severity of that pain point. So whenever you're trying to solve for a customer problem, always look at which is the most frequent and the most severe problem. Whichever segment rates the highest on that is what you should try to solve for. For example, if you're building, say, a lending company, would you solve for short-term loans or would you solve for large ticket size long-term loans? You would identify which are the customer segments. You would identify which is a bigger pain point. So maybe short-term loans is high on frequency, but low on severity. Because honestly, although we have lazy pay, but do you really need loans to buy chole bhature on Zomato? Maybe not. But do you need loans to go further for your study, buy a home, buy durable or appliances? Maybe yes. And does that affect your life in a significant way? Absolutely. Does not having chole bhature one day affect your life significantly? I mean, some of you may argue it does, but it could probably be avoided one day, right? So to look at every problem statement when you define it, and before you dive into the solution, the severity and the frequency of that problem. Sometimes it's really the frequency that you want to solve for, because in fintech especially, the more frequent the problem is, the more engagement you can drive, and then you can do a bunch of other things with the customer and you can drive behavior that way. So it's not such an easy answer, but if you follow the approach of solving the problem in a structured manner and assigning severity and the frequency to it, you will be able to at least identify which solution do you want to build first. And then you start building that solution, which is where you get into looking for the unfair advantage that you would be able to build. So Yashvi, now that you've said unfair advantage, please help define unfair advantage. Like in this world, can we still get unfair advantage, and how do we get that?
I mean, it would be more of like something which is being uniquely or first time being done around. That is what we would define it as unfair advantage. It's like very hard to copy around, or like you have an added advantage than existing products which you do into the market.
Got it.
So that's how I would say unfair advantage would be.
So you said hard to copy. Anything else?
Hard to copy and maybe difficult to adopt or bring that into the existing market or products.
Got it. Anyone else wants to give that a shot? Should we call on a few people who earlier participated? Pankaj, Abhishek, Rizwan. All right. Okay. So unfair advantage is essentially anything which is hard to copy, correct? Anything which you cannot buy. So, so Shreya, maybe you want to say high entry barrier, right? So if something is an unfair advantage, you've created a high entry barrier, not a low entry barrier.
Sorry.
So you've created a high entry barrier, which means that, for example, and I know this is getting recorded, but now that it's passed, the Competition Commission was also looking at the deal between PayU and BillDesk, right? Because it creates a significant scale. But does that create any barrier to entry? Not really. We have Razorpay, we have Cashfree, we have everyone else. So may not be, we can say that, hey, it's hard to copy this kind of scale, but doesn't really create a barrier to entry. Yes, it's a unique skill that you alone possess. Could be PayU has, say, a CTO that is so good, and he can build a stack so good that it'll be far bigger and better than the industry. So it's a key people skill that it cannot be copied. So usually your partners, your endorsers, your key people, your intellectual property, that is what really defines your unique and unfair advantage, because that cannot be copied or bought by anyone. Otherwise, everything else that you do for the first time, maybe moat, but moat is mostly what your idea and your solution revolves around. Unfair advantage is that something that sets you apart from your competition and that cannot be copied. For example, say Google's algorithm. It's not so hard for anyone else to come in. I mean, search engine is not as unique a technology, right? Bing has it. A bunch of other people have it across the world. I spent some time in China. China have their own search engines. So search engine is not the unique capability, but their ability to drive the right ads, score ads in a way that it is a great combination of relevance as well as revenue to them, is really what they've built, which is very, very hard to copy. It's an absolute unique advantage. And obviously the fact that you cannot hire Sergey Brin and Larry Page. I mean, you could, but probably they'll cost you more than the company. So great points there. I honestly want to keep some time for questions as well as what and how we've built this, and also mention a few things that we are doing for the startup ecosystem. So I'll close it here. I will just show you the startup model canvas that we follow here, and then essentially close it. So you mentioned all the points, and if you didn't get my lecture, you should contact Yashvi. She knows much more. So essentially what you do when you're building out your startup idea is that you look at the customer segments. Who are you building it for? Then you identify the problems, right? You identify which are the problems in this segment. You map that with severity and frequency. You then say that, hey, I want to look at the revenues that I can generate out of it. So because you never want to solve a problem without being able to charge for it. Now someone would argue that, hey, Google never charged for anything, but they at least have that in their mind that at scale, they'll be able to make money off ads. So that you need to be very clear of the eventual money you can make on it, because otherwise it's an idea that no one wants to pay for, and that's never a good thing. You have to have essentially someone pay for it. Then you drive into the solution that you can exactly design that will solve a certain problem for that customer segment based on severity and frequency and generate revenue for you. That is the solution that you need to build. So everything that is numbered here is in a way that you have solved for and done the first step, and then you're coming to the next, so that you're able to drive the solution accordingly. Then you get into, if you're developing the solution, what is your unique value proposition? Why should people come to you? And what are you offering to them of value? Then you get into looking at channels which you can use to distribute and reach out to those customer segments. You get into the key metrics where you measure, with which you measure success. You see whether you can you can do this at a cost that makes sense for you. Basically, can you derive any margins, at least on a variable basis, if not on an overall basis? Because any business, especially tech or large machinery or factory, there is an upfront cost to building a business. So there is a lot of fixed cost in building a business, but at least on a variable cost basis, every transaction should be making you money. Otherwise, you could be in businesses that will never make money and that are not good businesses to invest in or start. I mean, the world can give you enough money, but we've seen all that has happened to most of the startups that have gotten listed that have not had a healthy revenue or a margin cycle. So you need to look at least your variable cost very carefully. Then really comes the unfair advantage. Can you have and build an unfair advantage that no one can copy or no one can beat you at? That's when you really identify and keep doing this. And this lean model canvas essentially is a replacement for the long 3-year plans and Excel sheets that people create, or those pitch decks that go into 20 pages and sort of bore the investors. while I was researching for this talk, I also read this very interesting quote. It said that pitch decks and business plans are documents that investors make you write that they never read. Not me. I'll attribute it to the right person, but that's exactly what we're talking about. When you're a startup, you need to go and test your hypothesis very quickly, but you should also follow the framework in terms of who are you building it for, the problem based on the severity and the frequency of it. You identify the revenue that you can make out of this. Then you design your solution, identify a unique value proposition, identify channels that you can use to distribute that solution, identify the key metrics that you will measure to see the success of it, see the cost structure, can it be done profitably over a long period of time, and then see if you can build an unfair advantage. If you have all of these 9 figured out, I think you should go and build that company. Please do it. And that's essentially the message I'll say. And as ecosystem enablers, we're doing a bunch of things, and I'd love to be in touch with most of you. We're looking at helping startups from every stage from idea to when they grow, giving them credit for their growth, eventually giving them exits with a early stage fund of ours. We built a rewards platform which can help startups at each stage of their journey get some credits for the SaaS softwares that they use. For example, if you're trying to incorporate your company, we'll give you Vakil search credits. If you're going online, we'll help you with Shopify, then HubSpot for marketing, and so on and so forth. So we have this. We are also building a two-sided marketplace, which would be a good way for startups to find investors and investors to find startups to invest in. And we will have payments data that is far better than any Excel sheet will tell you about the run rate of a business. So there'll be much better validation. There'll be much better social proof. So would love to be in touch with most of you. I was given 40 minutes. I think I've sharp closed it in 40. Open for questions. Please go ahead and ask me as many questions as you can.
Guys, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away, or in case you want to put it on the chat, that we can take questions from there as well.
Okay, please tell me. Okay, let me ask people, what exactly do you think are the pain points of a startup? Let's do it in this manner, right? So we've discussed lead model canvas and business model canvas. What are you hearing as pain points from startups? Let's try and, as ecosystem enablers, just list that down. That will be great feedback for me and something that I can also take back from the session. Vanya, what in your mind is the pain point that a startup faces today? Maybe we'll have to have this conversation.
Yeah, I think so. What I generally feel is that a lot of startups, they face a lot of issues in GTM. They don't know, they have a product and they're obsessed with it. They, want to add one more new feature, one more, new detail in their product. But when you talk to them about, okay, so now how do you think you'll actually launch it? How do you want to go to market with this? Then I think that's where a lot of startups, I feel, face a challenge, or they don't know, or they're maybe scared, or maybe don't know exactly how to do this. So I think that's one of the challenges for sure.
Good point. I think GTM is an important one. Hard to solve that as ecosystem enablers. What we have, in fact, and maybe I'll bounce this off and give me what else we can do. We have a data science team. What they do is help you. Say if you're a wealth tech company, we're working for one wealth tech company. We're trying to tell them that, hey, reach out to Vanya because she has more money, and not reach out to Vishesh. So tighten their marketing funnel, reduce their cost of acquisition by saying that PayU knows on an aggregate level this gender in this city, within this age bracket, with this affluence score, because you've shopped a lot more on Flipkart maybe, I can tell you that this is the customer to target based on the affluence score. So we are helping them, helping a lot of startups with our data insights in terms of how they can plan their GTM, because as this famous saying goes, right, in advertising, 50% of the money is wasted, but you don't know which 50%. So we're trying to help people identify which 50%.
True, makes sense. So we have a question from Varun who says that what are the important key metrics for early stage startups? Maybe from an incubator's point of view, what they should look at as, if any startup has met A, B, and C, we can probably graduate them to another level, or put them out, basically graduate them, because I do feel a lot of incubators face this challenge as well. Once they have a startup in their cohort, they don't know when exactly to say, okay, now your journey with us is probably till this point, and now you can go ahead and maybe explore something else as well.
Got you. No, very interesting question, Varun. I think if I were to just say one thing that every startup should look at is really customer adoption. Adoption, if you're getting, that is validation of your hypothesis, right? So if your hypothesis, like I said, academically, we should define startups not as Flipkarts and Mintras and Zomatos of the world. We should define startups as someone trying to prove a hypothesis. So hypothesis can only be proven with social proof. If you say tomorrow launch a company, I don't know if everyone's seen that movie Reluctant Fundamentalist. They give you that case that how many people will be interested in a company, and what would you value a company that has the technology to apparate you from one place to the other within seconds. And then they go down into the technology of you apparating. So they are disintegrating you at one place and then integrating you at the place that you want to be at. And then the main character or the protagonist of that movie says that this will be valued at zero, because you read the primary market research. People are not comfortable, other than the goods, people are not comfortable disintegrating themselves and integrating themselves at another place. They're okay doing that for goods, but not for people themselves or their children or their knowns or their relatives. So people transportation with apparate as a functionality may not work, but goods may work. So that's proving your hypothesis. So I think at the early stage, when you're trying to validate your idea, adoption from your core customer segment that you've identified in terms of your frequency and severity, if they are adopting, that's the first thing you should look at. Again, there could be multiple answers to this, but that's what I believe. Scale up is one of the key issues. Startup. Yeah, Abhishek, I think that's something that people are probably very, very thankful to you for, or your company. Scale up is a very, very big issue, right? So if you validated your hypothesis, how do you get to the scale and that distribution that you really need, which is the channel partnerships that you're talking about, or which is one of the things that we talked about during our lean model canvas and the business model canvas. I think that's our job as ecosystem enablers anyway, right? That we provide them the channels that they can use to scale up. So, for example, we would work with a lot of startups to take them live on, our consumer partner apps. We have taken a lot of people live through use cases. Like if there is a merchant of ours and is looking for customer adoption, we've taken their integration live on PhonePe. We've taken their integration live on a bunch of consumer apps that have a large distribution. So I think that goes without saying, yes, scale up is a major issue, and every startup needs to look at the right channel partners that reach the right set of customers that we've identified at the early stage of our hypothesis setting. And we're able to gain scale there, and we're able to gain mind share there. For early stage startups, product market fit, and to be really specific, finding the right mentors and resources, hiring the right team, and also non-tech founders, trying to find tech founders, team members. Oh yeah, I mean, I think there cannot be enough said about Suhas. There cannot be enough said about finding the right partners, right? Because that's, as we discussed, was the unique value. Sorry, the unfair advantage that you can create. So if you can find a partner that really brings in something of value, first of all, to be honest, in this kind of scenario, if you can find a tech founder to start with, let alone someone who can create an unfair advantage for you, I think engineers today are their worth in gold. So so that's the problem to start with, and then trying to find someone who can create that unfair advantage for you. So point well taken. I think what we are trying to do about that is today what we're trying to do is building an expert connect platform. We're trying to partner with a lot of experts in the field who can, if not join the companies, but at least act as experts for initial consulting, give early access and free first calls to startup founders so that they can at least run the structure by them, run the architecture by them. We are opening our own product and tech experts on the platform for calls with startup founders. So we are opening that up. So our CTO will do calls with startup founders and talk to them about their stack. Our CPO will talk to them. Our COO will speak with them. We are trying to open up our experts who have 20, 25 years of experience in the industry, building products and scaling companies. And that's something that we are doing. I don't know how many incubators would have that, but most incubators have senior mentors, or we're happy to partner with you and offer that. But yeah, great point there. Maybe we can, Suhas, after this, connect offline and see how we can help. Hiring the right kind of human resources. Yeah, Alisha, I mean, again, there cannot be more said about this. So I'll leave it at that. Finding how passionate they are about the idea and the progress and difficulty for startup founders. True, because I think another strange trend that I've seen is people finding founders. Like you find your founders together. These days, what has happened is that people are trying to find founders because they have to give them the title. If the idea is someone's and they need some expert to come in and build that with them, the title of a founder is a fancy one for them, and the equity that comes with it is maybe very attractive. But the passion you may not be able to win by just giving a title. I completely agree. I don't know how a PayU or maybe us can solve for it, but let's discuss how we can do that. Vijendra, we work with social startups and we have difficulty in finding the right investors. Happy to connect on this one. I have worked at Dalberg. We have enough folks who look at CSR funds, who work with a lot of large companies who invest or want to invest in social startups. So Vijendra, let's definitely, Vanya, we can pass on my email ID, my connect. I'm happy to connect on this one. This is an area of passion for me. I worked in government, very, very interested in supporting social startups that make an impact. Absolutely a topic close to my heart. So we should be able to help. I don't know if PayU in general focuses on a certain theme of startups. We want to help people across the board, but yeah, why not? Let's look at this. Prosus also has a division for impact and sustainability. Maybe we can look at it from that perspective as well and assign some funds there. Any links for the Experts Connect platform? Suhas, as soon as it's launched, I will be the first one to share it with you. It's right now in the building stage. But yeah, I think the Experts Connect platform is something that we are also very keen on because it's very difficult to build that kind of repository of mentors at such an early stage. And that's why a lot of these founders you find from the IITs, because they have so many mentors as their alums only, that they have it much easy in terms of taking guidance and getting mentorship. For incubators to partner with PayU, we can extend that to incubators here. And absolutely. In fact, Suhas, we partnered with the Tamil Nadu government. Our COO, Mohit Gopal, who also happens to be my boss, we signed an MOU with the Tamil Nadu government. We're working with Guidance Tamil Nadu. A close friend of mine from my days in government works with the Tamil Nadu government now, Zach. We are working with the Tamil Nadu government to digitize the factories that they have, to help their startup ecosystem, and to bring in more customer adoption in the state through transport cards and a bunch of other customer adoption measures, again based on the frequency here, because we want to drive behavior. But Suhas, definitely let's connect about this, because Tamil Nadu is a partnership. We are already talking to the state government. I think wherever we can help, we will definitely pass a helping hand. Perfect. All right. Any more questions? Please keep sending your questions. These are all very important points. In fact, also gives me a lot of feedback on what we are hearing from across the ecosystem, and maybe we should all work together on solving these. Any plans for Uttarakhand ecosystem? Why not help us get inroads into the state? We're happy to support. Again, my email ID is here. If someone doesn't have it, please write to me. I'll be happy to see where we can collaborate.
So Vishesh, just because Uttarakhand system came in the context, I just want to say, so we Headstart was, throughout September, we're doing something called Bharat Pitchathon. So we're having pitch events in 23 plus cities physically. And so I happened to go to Uttarakhand for one of the events, and the kind of startups that we saw there was just amazing and, very surprising, unexpected. We had some amazing D2C brands coming in with, world-class finish. And I mean, some of they had made stuff from the local ingredients that are present there. Uttarakhand, everybody knows, is very rich when it comes to herbs and, other things as well. So, I mean, if you haven't visited, you should definitely plan something for that ecosystem as well. It's pretty incredible and good to see that so many startups are building out of there.
No, definitely. I mean, thanks for this input. In fact, my family happens to be from the hills, so it's always an interest. Like any reason to go back, I will. Any specific difference for SEs and lean canvas? SEs, Vijendra, what's SE here? Social startups. I think this may be a bit, let me not say controversial, but something that I've not been able to set my, make peace with. When I was at Dalberg or when I was in government, I believe we shouldn't call anything a social startup unless it has an end game. See, I believe in the idea of a welfare state, but if we are talking about welfare, that also has its quantifiable value. For example, the startup that Ratan Tata has funded for connecting elderly people with youngsters. Would you call that a social startup? For sure. Would they have a revenue model? I'm guessing yes. Would they have a profitability path? Why not? So when we say social startups, I think we should be very careful. Are we calling them social because they are touching on a cause which appeals to a larger base, which is not being looked at by the corporate community, which is not traditionally in the realm of finance or food tech or ed tech and this and that? Otherwise, technically, everything is a social startup, right? I'll give you this. I mean, why wouldn't you call Byju's a social startup? I mean, their selling techniques have been called in question a bunch of times, but they are probably educating more kids sitting online now. Maybe we wouldn't call it a social startup because it's very restrictive. Who can pay 10,000 rupees for a course? How many people can afford a laptop? How many people can afford their tabs? I think those are questions to ask of each other, but I believe anything which has a path to profitability and is sustainable on its own is a startup or is a business at the end of the day. If it doesn't, then it's really welfare and we should see it from that lens. Handloom, agricultural work, everything that has a path to profitability and sustainability is a startup to my mind. Yes, there are focused funds that look at certain sectors, but I would love to talk to you more about social startups. Let's connect offline, but I'll leave you with this story, which my manager told me, because I had worked in government. So 1 or 2 years into PayU, he asked me, aage kya karna hai life mein? And I tried and slip into a little bit of Hindi because I don't know how many people are comfortable in it, but just will give you the right effect for this story. So we were in the breakout area and he was already a senior vice president at the company. And I had started this vertical that had about 19 people in the team now. So he asked me a question, aage kya karna hai? And I said, this is good. I will work in the corporate world for a while and I'll make my money, and then I'll want to go back to public life and social service. And he said, and just off the bat, he said, why do you think you're not doing social service right now? I said, how am I doing social service? I'm working at a company which is in payments and which is telling people to buy and shop more online, and that's how I'm making my money. He's like, how many people were there in your team when you joined? I said, no one. I was the first one who joined to start this business. He asked me, how many people are there today? I said, 19. He said, I'll leave it at that. You've created 18 more jobs, and that's the social impact you've made. So I think from then on, my perspective on what is social and what is not has really changed. So anywhere where you're adding value to society, where you're expanding the pie, is a social startup, is making an impact, is a social company. Anything that does not have its own sustainability and profitability path is a welfare venture, and it should be looked at it that way. I will leave it at that. I am a little over time, and thank you so much, Vanya, and thanks everyone for making the time. It was really great talking to you, and I'd love to connect with all of you separately.
Thank you so much, Vishesh. Thank you for taking us through the journey and also sharing a lot of personal experiences as well. So thank you for taking out the time today, and thank you everybody for joining in.